Beelzebub's backstep now goes farther and is faster. This is what it looked like before. Jumping L has been buffed as a cross-up tool. Before, if you cross the opponent up, it wouldn't connect. Now it's pretty simple to cross up with. You might think of this as a buff to his mix-ups on jump-ins, but really this is just allowing him to actually use jumps to escape from situations and swap slides with the opponent, while also being able to actively take his turn. None of his other jump normals have the ability to actually hit on cross-up. Before, if the opponent was pressuring Beelzebub in the corner and Bubs wanted to make an escape and jump out of it, he actually had no way of guaranteeing his turn using any of his normals. This is basically bad. If Bubs makes this escape to jump on out, he has no way of actually enforcing his offense for the correct read. Depending on the situation, he might not even be plus at all. Compare that to Gran, who's able to hit Beelzebub with 2 different jump normals when he escapes the corner like this. Compare that to now, where Beelzebub has an opportunity to actually force his turn after he escapes the corner like this. It's also worth mentioning that if the opponent is right next to you and you go for a jump like this, your JL is not going to hit them cross up. So, just something to be aware of. There's going to be some spacings and situations where this isn't going to work, but at the very least, having situations where you can get this to work is a functional buff for Beelzebub. The recovery of his dash heavy attack has had its recovery reduced by 2 frames, so now, instead of being -8 on block, it's -6. At this spacing, it's effectively safe. The lateral knockback on counter hit has also been decreased, allowing for easier follow-ups. Compare that to before. Not even possible to get a link at the same range. Before, if you wanted to have any chance of getting a pickup on counter hit, you had to basically be right next to the opponent and use this move. And this is not a good idea. It was -8 on block before, and if you got defended against at that range, well, then you're going to basically be eating a medium or heavy punish depending on the matchup that you were fighting against. It just really didn't make sense to have this be the function. Considering its excellent range, Beelzebub appreciates being able to throw this out, be a little safer for it, and also have more reliable pickups off of it. I think you're going to see Beelzebub incorporate this in their neutral game plan a little bit more now. The light version of Chaos Caliber has a couple of weird changes to it. It has 3 different attacks, each of which have its own unique set of active frames. Before, the first hit would have 3 active frames, while the second and third hit would have 2 each. Because of this, sometimes you would be able to make a far distance poke against the opponent, but not be able to convert due to the active frame timing of things. Now the active frame timings are a little bit different. Instead of being 3 frames long, the first hit is only 2 frames long, and now the second hit is 3 frames in duration instead of only 2 frames. The third hit still is only active for 2 frames. The outcome of this that the patch notes mention is that it is now easier to chain into the second hit of the light Chaos Caliber from his far-standing medium. As you can see now, we get 3 hits in this attack instead of 2, meaning that we actually had a combo into Chaos Caliber here. I go into this much detail with the change because the patch notes themselves do, but also because it's important to note a change in the functionality. This could have a couple of other impacts on some combos that Beelzebub does, how it interacts with other normals as well. So if anyone out there is able to point out additional examples of the impacts of this change, do let us know in the comments below. We'd appreciate it. The lateral knockback and launch height have been increased on Chaos Caliber Medium's version. Now he's plus 36 with the knockdown in this situation. This is what it looked like before. He was plus 34 in this situation, but a little closer to the opponent. After a dash forward, you're effectively at the same functional range with them and the old patch and the new patch. So this is really just a buff for him to have increased corner carry, as well as maintaining the same level of offense that he had before. I think he'll appreciate the buff. The heavy version of Chaos Caliber has an interesting change. Beelzebub's contact box, this is the thing that makes it so that when you run into the opponent, the game will realize that you're running into the opponent and will cause this bit of pushback against them. That contact box now extends higher during midair hits. The patch notes specifically state this is to stop Beelzebub from switching sides with the opponent when he hits a high airborne opponent in the corner, like so. This is how it should behave now. Beelzebub will appreciate being able to use this move to extend his combos in the corner without having to sacrifice that corner positioning in the first place. While he is a character that likes to play at full screen, he still does appreciate having the corner to continue his offense. So overall, I would argue this is a welcome change, unless there's some reason that a Beelzebub player would rather have the opponent get launched out of the corner in these situations. Ultimate Chaos Caliber sees several changes, all of them being buffs. Before, if you were to use this move on block, the opponent would be pushed out quite a ways, but then Beelzebub himself would be -6. Basically, the opponent would be able to start taking their turn back against you, and you'd be forced to disengage. The knockback has also been adjusted, and there's been increased rebound distance after the wall bounce to make it easier to follow up in mid-screen. If you got a farther range hit, it could be nearly impossible to get any kind of pickup. If you're point blank, it was possible to link a 5M, but getting any other follow-ups afterwards was a little tricky. The recovery has been reduced by 6 frames, and the hit stop has been increased by 2 frames. So now, on block, Beelzebub is +2 instead of -6. If you're point blank, you're in range for a far medium as well. So you'll be able to threaten frame traps and probably go for some 6XL pressure or press with any other advantage. Beelzebub isn't now punished for going for this move and having him block. Instead, he's able to force his turn again in some sequences. This is what the adjusted knockback and the extra rebound distance look like. Before, you could only get a far M. Now you can get a far heavy. You'll note that at maximum range, it is still a little tricky to get a pickup here. Unfortunately, in mid-screen, I don't see too much practical application of this to extend combos. If you're right next to the opponent and you hit them with the Ultimate Chaos Caliber, you're actually able to then link into 2H into Light Karma and get a more elaborate extension. However, in my testing, I have not been able to get any of the triple attack sequence of Beelzebub to link into this. However, this is consistent after you hit the opponent with any version of Karma. My first thought was this could potentially use to set up some cool DP punish combos. However, the cooldown of Karma prevents that from working. Karma's still on cooldown by this point if you use it to start off the punish, so unfortunately, I don't really see too much use of this new link in mid-screen. In my own bit of testing, it feels like the ultimate version of Chaos Caliber's best use is just to help you convert off of dash-heavy hits. That being said, you're not really adding a whole lot of extra damage to it, so I'm not so sure if this is the way you want to be spending your SBA gauge. I think the biggest change for Beelzebub in this patch is the change to his Unisonic. It now shares a cooldown with his DP like Jellian Field instead of Chaos Caliber. This has a lot of implications for his combo routing. For starters, you can now use both of these special moves in the same combo. The ultimate version of Unisonic, however, did see some nerfs, pretty much in line with other system mechanic changes regarding ultimate skills. The whiff recovery after landing has been increased by 5 frames. This basically means that if the opponent is able to successfully spot dodge this, they'll get a guaranteed punish every time. Compare that to before, where the opponent's best option usually was to try and get a throw punish on, but depending on how the timing of everything went down, Beelzebub could still potentially tech it. Light Karma had its pull range expanded. Before, this is about the range that you had with it. This is what it looks like now. As you can see, the overall range hasn't really increased, but instead the amount of distance the opponent gets pulled in has increased. Makes it a little more of a threatening option if Beelzebub wants to use it. This namely changes his ability to get rewards off of his charged fireballs. Compare that to now. This seems nice on paper, but once you get outside of this range, this becomes a lot less useful. You still have the ability to use heavy karma to pick up combos from here. A situation that comes to mind for me is if he uses this in the middle of a block string to try and bait out a brave counter. And Beelzebub wouldn't be scared to do this. He is quite plus after this move on block. Even if it's uncharged. So I suppose this is the utility of this buff. The range of his command throw super, Anthem, has been buffed. Before, you had to be right next to the opponent. Even a little step back like that meant it would whiff. That same step back will now be able to reach. It's a very small buff. It's only the matter of a couple of units within the game of distance, I would suppose. However, it is nice to have this utility where Beelzebub can potentially have more setups where he's able to actually threaten this as an option instead of having to rely on being point blank against the opponent for it. Be on the lookout for Beelzebub's trying to lab combo resets in the corner and then go into an Anthem to mix you. Beelzebub's last change is Chaos Legion, where an issue was fixed where the close version would not activate when you were pushed back by the opponent's dash animation. This is how it behaves now. I personally wasn't even aware that you could do that to Chaos Legion, so the fact that an opponent actually now has to deal with this instead of just continuing to run at Beelzebub in this situation where I guess you would get a knockdown, run up on Beelzebub, Beelzebub would throw this out, you could just commit to running past it, then get a full punish on him instead of being pushed back to full screen or having to spot dodge it in order to get the punish. It's just a nice little quality of life thing. Nothing too substantial for Beelzebub, though. All in all, I think that while Beelzebub was buffed in this patch, I don't see them as being too incredibly substantial. If anything, it kind of just brings him up to a couple of other characters' levels overall, giving him some extra combo utility by changing Unisonic shared cooldown is nice. There's a little bit of extra functionality so that he's able to have far more damage with his poke ranges, as well as being able to use the medium version to either increase his corner carry or set up for more zoning. He does have a nice little bit of a brave counter trap now with the light karma being able to convert off of a close, fully charged fireball. But these are all just little things where it feels like he should have had these before instead of really giving the character something new to work with. He is heavily affected as well by the system mechanic changes to the ultimate skills. Ultimate Karma is a huge move for him. Ultimate Unisonic was a big move for him, but now it's far less safe for him to throw out, so he's going to be thinking twice before he uses that move. I don't know. I just don't find myself too impressed with Beelzebub here. He might be more functional than before, but he was arguably hardly functional to begin with. We'll see what happens with him in this patch.